Bring on our good friend Mike McAllister to talk Cuse basketball and Cuse football. Mike, we have a lot to get to with you. I'm not going to make you talk about the Eagles, so you got a break from talking about your Philadelphia Eagles.
That is smart. That is real smart.
Let's go back to Saturday.
Do we have to?
Well, we do. We do have to. And it was ugly. What was the most concerning part for you? Because I think for me, as we stated, I thought just the effort in particular was the most concerning part. But a lot of turnovers. You know, they were non-competitive against a team that's not even in the top 25. I think Maryland's good, but, you know, it was a blowout right out of the gate pretty much. What was the most concerning part for you?
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head, that it was the energy, the effort. You know, you're playing in New York City, and I get that it's not the Dome, but it should be your home away from home, right? We remember how many times Syracuse went down to the Big East tournament. I get that was Madison Square Garden and not the Barclays Center, but even still, how many times that Syracuse fans packed that place, and it sounded like a home game for Syracuse. Even the Texas and Texas Tech games sounded like a very partisan Syracuse crowd during those games. And you expect that when you go to a place like that you should be energized and excited. And given, I know Maryland isn't a ranked team, as you mentioned. They're not a rival like Georgetown is. But you're playing a power conference opponent, and you're sitting at 500 trying to get a signature win that shows people, hey, don't give up on us quite yet. And it seemed like they had given up on themselves almost. You know, it felt like they didn't think they could win. They didn't play like they thought they could win. And the body language and effort and everything else just kind of felt that way the majority of the game. The only time it really didn't feel that way was when they were down by almost 40 and they started to press a little bit and went on a 12-2 run or whatever it was. And, you know, I tweeted out at the time, a 12-2 run cuts Maryland's lead to 27. That's a sentence that should not, a 13-2 run should not cut a lead to 27. And I had a lot of fans saying that's what Syracuse basketball is right now. And I get the apathy when you watch a performance like that. It was very concerning. I didn't expect them to win the game, to be honest with you, going into it, but I didn't expect it to look like that.
What do you make of Chris Bell?
I don't know what to make of Chris Bell. I really thought that, you know, some signs that I saw early in the season, even though, you know, they struggled those first three games, even though they won them against teams that we thought they should be blowing out or at least winning a little bit more comfortably. I thought some of the things that I saw from him, there was a little bit more effort on defense. He seemed to be rebounding a little bit better, was doing more things off the dribble and moving without the ball and scoring inside the arc as opposed to kind of just standing there waiting for a pass and launching. I thought that was encouraging that perhaps his game had taken the next step, but instead it seems like the three-point shooting has regressed, and now everything else is starting to regress as well. It's really confusing as to what happened because he's just ineffective almost the entire time that he's out on the floor, and he's not getting good looks from three-point range. When he does get them, they don't fall, and Syracuse needs him. They need him to be one of, if not their best player right now with JJ out, and he's someone that, you know, it doesn't seem like the coaching staff feels can play consistently. So it's really confusing. I don't understand exactly what happened to him, but it seems like there's something going on that has really hurt his game.
I got to make an admission, Steve and Mike, that I should be fired for this. I haven't announced this yet. I said Chris Bell would make first team all ACC this year.
I don't think that's happening.
Yes, I should be fired immediately.
His numbers on Saturday: 17 minutes played, had 2 points. He had that layup on the fast break. Was 1 for 4 from the field, 0 for 1 from 3. No rebounds, no assists, no turnovers, no blocks, no steals. For people last week who were getting on us about, you know, that we were spending too much time on Chris Bell, that he was doing other things. He's not doing other things.
That prediction,
he did other things against Albany. He's not doing other things against real opponents.
That prediction I made was as bad as the Maryland game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thank you.
So, you know, Mike, I feel like we asked you this a week or two ago, but I'm going to ask you again. What is fixable for this team right now? Because it's getting away from them, right? I mean, they're 5-6 now. They're most likely going to be 6-6 going into 2025. We don't know for sure when JJ's coming back. We think it's soon-ish. But what can they do to, you know, forget about the NCAA tournament. What can they do to, improve? I guess that's the biggest thing right now. We want to see improvement out of this team.
Yeah, well, they can play with a lot more energy and effort. And to be honest with you, even if I know there's some faction of the fan base, however large or small that may be, that think this team is basically what it is. It's not going to be competitive against good teams. It's not going to win very many games, and that may or may not be true. We'll see how that plays out. But what they can control is how hard they play. And Coach Autry said in the post-game press conference, I think kind of says it all, which is at least every other game we've played this year, we've competed and we've fought and we've given it everything we had. And in this game, we didn't. And that's kind of my thing is the players are who they are. And yes, you can improve in some respects. I think that there are things defensively they can do better. I think they can shoot the ball better from three-point range. I think there are things they can do offensively to have more off-ball movement and cuts and things like that. But largely, give an effort. Make it seem like you want to be there. You want to play. There's some pride in wearing the Syracuse uniform, and that's the biggest thing is if they can do that, then, yeah, it might not be a great season. They might be around 500. They might be under 500. Maybe they'll figure out a way to get slightly above 500 because the ACC is pretty down. But in order to do that, I think the players have to kind of, show that they've got that energy and that pride and that want to play basketball at a high level. And if they don't, then you're going to see more of what you saw on Saturday.
Mike, I got one more for you about basketball. Going into last year, where did Syracuse rank among schools going into the portal? Did a lot of schools have GMs last year? Was Syracuse behind the ball and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say a lot of schools had GMs. I would say some did. I think Syracuse getting a GM now is certainly a good thing. I don't think Syracuse was significantly behind in that respect. I think that's something that's sort of just starting to come to fruition for the last couple of years. But, the biggest thing I think, they clearly wanted Eddie Lampkin and targeted him early, and they got him. So they got someone that they prioritized. I think the biggest thing with Eddie Lampkin is he hasn't been right since his back has been acting up. He hasn't been the same player as we saw the first, 3 games of the season and even the first game down in New York City against Texas. He was fantastic in that game, and he really hasn't been the same since. And I think that back has really hampered him. That has hurt the team as a whole. And then you look at the other players on the team. Jaquan Carlos hasn't quite been what I think everyone expected him to be. Lucas Taylor really hasn't given him much other than, some solid defense here and there. Jair Davis has been pretty good, but when you don't have JJ and then, you're trying to get a couple of freshmen in the mix and Chance Westry hasn't been there, things just haven't worked out. But largely in the transfer portal, there were also a couple other guards that they went after before they ended up with Jaquan Carlos. You think about Dakota LeFew, who's at Georgia playing really well. They went after him very hard. Mack, that's at Georgetown, was someone else that they were rumored to be involved with. So, sometimes things don't go exactly your way, and part of the risk with portaling every single year and getting multiple players every single year, as you have to because players leave your program, is it makes it that much more difficult to have continuity, and then you just never know how a player is going to translate from one level of basketball to another or one program to another with a different environment, coaching, system, et cetera. So there's always going to be, risks when you're going that route.
All right, Mike, let's switch gears. We do have to talk a little football before we let you go, and we have to start with Rickie Collins and, the drama of, is he going to sign? Did he sign? He says he's not going to sign. But then he did sign. What happened to the best of your knowledge? And I know you waited to report it until it was a done deal. We did the same thing at Channel 9 just to make sure that it was all set to go, but there was a lot of on again, off again for a few days. What exactly went down?
Yeah, so it sounds like, things were moving in a positive direction between Syracuse and Collins, and then the report came out that he was intending to commit, and that's different than he has given a verbal commitment. That's basically saying, look, I think things are headed in the right direction, and ultimately he's going to end up at Syracuse. With him posting, I haven't committed anywhere, my recruitment is still open, I think it was more so in response to the fact that people ran with the report that said he intends to commit and said, per that report, he has committed, which was not accurate. That's not what the report said, which was unfair to the original report. And then because of that, he felt the need to issue the statement and the post. And basically, from there, things continued to go on behind the scenes. There was clearly communication between both sides. He officially signed. Then it became official. It's noted as such in the transfer portal that he is signed with Syracuse, and I think ultimately he hasn't posted anything because of all of the drama that went on with the original report and people running with it, that he's just decided to stay away.
All right, so let's assume that Kyle McCord is – yeah, go ahead.
Before you say assume he's back, where does that stand with Kyle McCord right now, Mike McAllister, and what percentage would you say he's at of coming back?
If I had to guess a percentage of Kyle McCord coming back, I'd say it was low. I don't know, 10%, if that. The main reason I say that is because I don't have much confidence in the NCAA looking at anything reasonably and doing stuff that is in the best interest of the student athletes. I just don't have any confidence in the NCAA whatsoever. So I just would rather be pleasantly surprised than be disappointed that they made a decision that I should have expected, so to speak. But as far as how this impacts Kyle McCord, one thing I'll tell you, this coaching staff is very upfront with recruits. And I cannot imagine a scenario where they don't tell Rickie, listen, we want you to come here because we think you're talented and you can be a benefit to our program and help our quarterback room. There is a scenario where Kyle comes back, in which case you would have to learn under him for a year. But you'd learn under someone who's going to be a pro, who has done this at a high level. He can teach you about our system, how to prepare, all of those things to get you even more ready when you are, it is your turn to potentially take over the reins. So I can't imagine a scenario where that hasn't been communicated to Rickie Collins.
You say that about the NCAA, but is the NCAA also in a position now that if Syracuse threatened a lawsuit, they'd fold like a cheap suit?
You'd hope so, but I have more confidence that they would do that for an Alabama, a Georgia, a Notre Dame, and Ohio State than they would for Syracuse. And that could be me being,
or Vanderbilt. They did it for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, that's true. All right. SEC country, right?
It could be a little conspiracy theorist on my end to have that opinion, but I just feel like those schools would sort of bow to them a little easier than they would to Syracuse.
All right, so now I'm going to ask the question that Paulie jumped in on. I was going to say, assuming Kyle McCord does not come back, is Rickie Collins the starting quarterback next year in your mind? We haven't seen much of him, right? 7 passes in his college career. Do you assume he's the starter?
He would be the guy that would be my favorite to be the starter, yes. I wouldn't say that I assume it to the same level that I did with Kyle McCord last year. But he would be the guy that going into spring ball would be the guy I think is the favorite. But I do think, even though that may be the case, that guys like Jakari Williams and incoming guy like Luke Carney are certainly going to have an opportunity to compete for that job, and that there is a possibility that they could significantly outperform Rickie Collins in spring ball, in fall training camp, and earn the starting job. I don't think that Rickie would be cemented so much so that it almost wouldn't matter how he looked, during training camp and during spring ball, that he would still get the job no matter what. Whereas I think going into last year, Kyle McCord, even if he did struggle during training camp, he was still going to be the guy.
All right, we got to rattle through a few signings because we're running late here. But Naquel Beatran, the big offensive lineman from Alabama, they got a kicker in Trip Woody. I know they just signed a wide receiver as well. Can you kind of touch on some of the highlights over the course of the last week?
Yeah, Beatrand is a big body. He's like 6'6", 330. Syracuse recruited him heavily out of high school, both under the Dino Babers administration, and then when he transferred from Texas A&M to Alabama, Syracuse recruited him then as well. So this is kind of third time is the charm, but he's definitely a big body. Has been at 2 major programs. Doesn't have a lot of playing experience, but certainly a big body with a lot of upside. Trip Woody, Fran mentioned at the NIL event that Syracuse was going to bring in a really good kicker, and this is someone who was a walk-on at Iowa, and Syracuse had a scholarship. He enters the portal, and it all worked out, and he's got one of the best portal names that they have. Trip Woody, I think, is going to be a popular name around Syracuse. And as far as the wide receiver, Tyshawn Russell is his name from South Carolina, former highly regarded recruit. had, I think, 5 catches for 80 yards as a true freshman in 2023. Didn't play last year as he redshirted, but fast, a 5'11", 6-foot, kind of built similarly to a Trevor Pena, and someone I could see being in the mix to take over once Pena does leave.
All right, I got one last quarterback question for you. How concerned are you going into next year with that schedule that we don't? It looks hard. We don't know if it is. It looks hard without a quarterback that's got game experience.
If you get Kyle McCord back, then that obviously changes everything. If you don't, I go into it looking at it as a transition year between Kyle McCord and whoever is going to be the next quarterback, meaning the most important thing, at least for me, now Fran Brown would argue otherwise, he doesn't care who the quarterback is, he thinks they should win every game, and that's the attitude you want. But I look at that schedule and say if they get to 6 or 7 wins with that schedule and an unproven quarterback, and that quarterback shows some flashes and gets a lot of experience, I think you consider that a very successful year.
All right, Mike, great stuff as always. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon, probably next Monday, right?
I will talk to him prior to the bowl game.
Oh, that's right.
TK99 for the pregame.
That's right. You guys will have him on Friday. All right, well, Merry Christmas either way, Mike. We'll talk soon.
How do you think the fan base will handle if it is a transitional year for football next year?
Not well. Does the fan base handle anything well? I don't know. Fans have seen that before, right? They saw the 10 wins under Dino and then immediately going back. I do think it's different, but
because I was willing to say last year's schedule looked easier. It wasn't necessarily as easy as everybody said it was going to be because they ended up beating a lot of ranked teams and bowl teams. But next year, if you're going by name brand,
right. Clemson's going to be tough.
You've got
SMU's
3
going to be
playoff
tough.
teams.
4. You got Tennessee, Notre Dame.
Oh, Notre
SMU,
Dame. I forgot
Clemson.
Notre Dame.
Yeah, you've got 4
plus
Miami.
Yeah, 4.
So 4.5.
All of them on the road.
Yeah,
you've got SMU,
Clemson,
Notre
Tennessee,
Dame.
Notre
Tennessee
Dame
is neutral.
right?
Miami's
Miami. Yeah,
that
is
Belichick
brutal.
in the dome.
That's right. If he's actually coach at that point. Conspiracy theory. He's stepping down after July 1st. No, I'm kidding. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll wrap up hour number 1 next on ESPN.